Good afternoon, Earthlings. How are you guys, Justice Warriors? How's my lighting? That's always my thing. Not to burden you with my problems. So it is Tuesday. It's the 26th. That's what I titled my live. Um, again, I couldn't give you an advance notice because I really didn't know how long it would take me to get on. There's so many commitments that I have each day. And you guys are my priority, but I have to fulfill all of my duties and responsibilities. I'm a mom and I have to like teach my kids that by role modeling, of course. Beck says, hi, Jazz. Sunset says, good morning. First thumbs up. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love all the stars. So thanks so much for being here, you guys. I get so excited coming on live. I'm always excited to get on. I want to get on like as early in the day as I can for many reasons. One is because I enjoy you guys so much. Two is because me brain works more better the earlier in the day, usually, if it works at all. Mark Molina says, good morning, gang. And Katie Bug says, hi, everyone. Good morning, Justice. So it's already afternoon for me. I don't know where you guys are, but yeah, thank you so much for being here, Susan. So let's jump right in, right? Replace pinned message. So, let's see. I've got my sign up here, share, subscribe, ring your notification bell if you please. I don't have my thumb handy. Well, I mean, I have these thumbs handy, my Fonzie thumbs. And what else? My disclaimer, everything I say is simply my opinion. Sometimes some crazy stuff flies out of my mouth without me noticing. Sometimes I get my facts incorrect. So always take what I say with a grain of salt. Please do your own research, come to your own conclusions, and know that even when I am 100% sure that I'm right, I still might not be right, or it might just be my freaking opinion. And I am very opinionated, if you haven't noticed. I've never noticed. But opinions change, right? They certainly do. So to continue with my whole disclaimer, everything I say is simply my opinion, simply for the sake of conversation, always hoping to learn and to be educational. And all my videos to date have been made for YouTube, and it's an entertainment platform. So I've mentioned that there's other platforms, but I just like to keep things simple. So I'm hopeful that things will just go smooth with this platform, but it's not going so smooth for everyone, right? We know that like Mr. Russell Brand got the boot. So I guess in some sense, other platforms are more liberal. Um, and overall being more liberal, I think, can be a very good thing, but not completely. At times, it can be less good. I've learned that in living in the state of Oregon. Anyway, my point is that I hope that this is the platform that I stay on. I've been on it for over a year. I like consistency. I like reliability. Um, and I really am not tech savvy, so I haven't tried to branch out to like Instagram and TikTok and all these types of things that I probably should. But that's fine because I'm just doing my thing here. I'm just doing my science experiment, and I really appreciate you guys doing it with me. So I have some freaking information that I can't believe that I found, and I feel like I should get a gold star, but that's always risky because maybe my information is fake news. Um, it's insane. And it's one of these things. This is why sleuthing is so fun, you guys. If you haven't sleuthed, it's so addictive because you're looking for one thing and you find something else and you're like, oh, what's this? Oh, really? So let me tell you what it is. This is so big. And I might not be able to keep up with your chat as well today as I usually try to because there's some crap that I just want to like lay down for you guys. Starting with the deputy to Chief Pelletier in the Maui case. His name is Charles Hank, and he was working very closely with Chief Pelletier in Vegas with the Vegas massacre, as they call it. So Charles Hank was what was the word that I used? I can't even read my own writing. I've been so excited about finding this. He just leadership. Okay, Vegas shooting leadership. Charles Hank. So before Pelletier even started 2 years ago, November. I think his start date was December 15th, but maybe it was November 15th. I can't remember. It was in November that he um, got the job for his buddy Chuck, Charlie, Charles, Charles Hank. Um, so the guy that he'd been working with in Vegas, and I think that Charles Hank had been with the Vegas PD for 30 years. But like I said, he had a leadership position in the Vegas mass casualty shooting event that Chief Pelletier was a captain. So he was in charge. He was the lead, but he wasn't a police chief. I want to be clear about that. He was a police captain for the Vegas PD. So I believe that Chief Pelletier brought Charles Hank with him as his deputy, and it's just crazy. So let me tell you how I found it. Um, I think he told on someone and he is being dragged through the mud for it. Oh, Mr. Brand, Russell Brand. Yeah, something happened. He's definitely being punished and dragged through the mud, and it probably has to do with something like that. It's like somebody's out to get him, it seems, in my humble conspiracy theory opinion, allegedly. And I didn't make that up. I always want to give my credit to Rich Lux, but I say it so often I don't feel like I need to say Rich Lux's name every single time I say it because he says it every single episode that he does. And I don't know, maybe I do too. I just think it's hilarious. And, I just don't want to be misleading. Like I didn't invent that. Captain promoted to chief in Hawaii. Exactly, Annie Ruler. So the captain of Las Vegas Police Department, who was the lead for the Vegas massacre, the Mandolin massacre, isn't that what they call it? Mandalay Sands, I think was the name of the hotel. The Mandalay massacre. Um, and not only was he promoted from captain to chief, but apparently the Maui Police Department has never had a non-native be their police chief. So that's a weird person to start with, in my opinion. But keep in mind, if you guys don't already know this, that there were some misappropriation of funds, shall we say, with government officials using company credit cards in Vegas, running up tabs over $20,000 at like girly bars or something like that, that were taken care of internally without any publicity in recent years prior to Chief Pelletier getting hired. So I wonder what, all of the connections are. But let me tell you the way I found Charles Hank's name, because if you'll remember, if you were paying attention, were you paying attention? In yesterday's video, I mentioned the last uh, dispensation, I think is how you say the name of the channel. I put it in my description. I put the link, and I think that's the only one I put in there yesterday. But that channel was talking about this person, Adam Herbert. And so yesterday, in relationship to Pelletier, I only mentioned Adam Herbert, but I said in my video that I didn't really know what the connection was with Herbert and Pelletier with Vegas, and I didn't know how that translated to Hawaii. So I found out by re listening to that video that Adam Herbert was a Fox News investigative reporter, and he worked closely with Chief Pelletier on the Vegas shooting. And I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that Adam Herbert may have been working on the covering Maui for Fox News, but I'm not 100% sure of that. So don't quote me, not for a second. because I was just kind of overwhelmed with all this information. I'm not really that good at this stuff, you guys. Like Shanda from Squirrels on Fire, she's really good at this stuff. I'm not like an investigative journalist and a citizen journalist and all this stuff, but I might seem like one because I kind of know a little bit. I know a little bit about a lot of things, and I know a lot about a few things, but I just feel like my brain is getting stretched so thin. Like I never thought the Maui case would be something that would capture my attention and my curiosity. And it has for many reasons, as you guys know. And it's just like when I start to think that the dust is settling and things are gonna continue on with unfortunately, I think things are gonna get forgotten about with all of the effery, and that people are just going to keep, moving in the direction that they need to in order to survive and thrive. Who's got time for lawsuits and looking into the past when you've come through a traumatic experience like that? It's the last thing you have time or attention for. You need to move forward. But I think it's really important for people that can handle it. And I don't know that I am one, but I'll give it a shot for as long as I can. I think that it's really important for us to keep bringing these things to people's attention because I think a lot more than 16 animals perished in that freaking fire, you guys. I could just start spitting nails because I was kind of crunching some numbers in me brain last night thinking if they only found 16. Oh, I came on live onto Squirrels on Fire and I said this. If they only found 16, it had been formulating all day. And we're talking about people's pets, we're talking about feral cats, which they had multiple colonies of feral cats in Lahaina. And you guys know how feral cats are. They're crazy like bunny rabbits. Um, and then there's wild boar. I don't know what other wild animals there are in Hawaii. I'm kind of ignorant about that. But my friend who lived there, who survived the fire, he posted pictures of wild boar and said that there's a lot in the area. I'll post one on my community tab. Um, so, there's also farm animals. So if they only had 16 distinct non-human corpses, and I'm thinking there had to be at least 1,600 animals that perished. So that would be 1%. So if they're accidentally disclosing that information that they only have 1% of the animals that perished, I think that you could translate that potentially over to humans. That if they're saying 97 humans perished, I think that's the number they're trying to pretend right now. Um, let's say that's 1%. But I don't think it's 1%. I don't think 9,000. I think that maybe over 1,000 people perished. So it's just really sad. Um, yeah, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So, let's just think about that for a minute. So Chief Pelletier, um, that guy was in charge of the largest open shooter massacre in the history of our country and the history of the world, I'm pretty sure. And now he's been in charge of the largest fire in our country in about 100 years. So it doesn't matter even if it was a wildfire, which really suspect that it wasn't a wildfire. Um, but even if it were, there's absolutely no reason for water to be shut off. Um, Cell phone signals were shut down, but they could get texts. So there's no reason for there not to be a text sent out to everybody in the area to evacuate. Normally, when there's evacuations like that in that area, Eric West on his most recent video just said in the last 12 hours that he was living there a while back when there was a tsunami. And the law enforcement, the public officials, they went door to door and they evacuated everybody because, it's a tsunami. So, when you've got a freaking fire like that, I'm gonna put a link to Eric West's newest video in today's description because he's just on it. He's on top of his game, and I really respect him, and I want to do what I can to kind of um, ride the wave that he's been making. Um, so he says in his video, contact Governor Green, and he says that he has the phone number and the email address. I didn't catch them, so I will try to catch them and put them in the description here. If all of us contact Governor Green and, you know, hit him with our questions and our concerns, that could be helpful. Um, make update Jack. Is that chief comes to your town, then leaves immediately? Um, it's hard to genetic distinguish sons and dads and moms and daughters with DNA. Well, and Brush Junkie has a new one too, and she has a picture of some giant blue barrels that they were allegedly putting human remains in. And that's just disgusting, in mixing multiple human remains, which, if everyone is incinerated, then of course they're going to be mixed. But for them to pretend with this whole body bag nonsense that they've been able to, put these distinct humans together and find that there was, one distinct human in multiple body bags or multiple distinct humans in one body bag, and that's how they were able to like lower their numbers. You guys have to remember that they started with over 3,000 missing people, and then the numbers settled, and the numbers continue to settle, and the numbers keep settling to, I think, when they say 97, I want to say that that fire in Rhode Island was 97, give or take one. So I know there was like over 200 people that went to the hospital, but I think it was about 97-ish that perished. So then they're neck and neck, and they're not like the worst fatality numbers wise for a fire. But that's what I think their goal is to try to not take that title since, like I said, Pelletier, it's a French name, I can't ever uncross those wires. Chief Pelletier, I think it's John Pelletier. He's already got the title of being in charge of that other massacre. And, I really think of this as a massacre. I think of it as the Maui massacre. I really think it's a land grab. I really think it's a water rights grab. I really think that it's just completely insane. Absolutely insane. Um, so I used a photograph of Gabby Petito for this thumbnail for this video because there was some more stuff I wanted to talk about with her case that I meant to talk about yesterday, but I was working so hard at keeping up with you guys. I missed a few really important points. So I'm trying to avoid that today. I'll try to find a good place in the middle. But I wanted to go over a couple notes that I took on Eric West's video and Brush Junkie's videos. And I also wanted to shout out to the person who brought up the Oslo landslide yesterday, and I totally missed it. It went like that. For those of you that aren't familiar, Oslo, I think it's Oslo. That's just north of Marysville and east of Arlington, Washington. It's a really small town in the foothills of the Cascades, and it's beautiful. Really tight knit community. And they had a horrible landslide in 2009. It was the year that we moved from Marysville back to Ohio, and we seriously thought about moving to Oslo. So when that landslide happened, and I want to say over 200 people just were gone in the mud, um, it was insane. And that really hit me hard. So I'm surprised that I didn't catch it right when you said, I remember Oslo. but I was like, "Oh, yeah, mudslides in Malibu and fires," and, the mudslides always happen after the fires because all of the trees that are, rooted into the earth holding the dirt together, they're burned down, and then the mud just goes. So thank you for bringing that up, and let's see, back to Maui. Eric West was real specific, and I listened to it a couple of times to make sure that I had it accurate, that the 4:30 AM was the time that the power was shut off in Lahaina. 4:30 AM is what time the power was shut off the day of the Lahaina fires on August 8th. So, the fires started prior to that. I think it was around 2:30 that there's that first flash in the woods, that big flash that they say is trees coming down on a power line. Um, and then, as you guys all know, they had the fires under control, they thought, they said, at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. It was given the all clear. And then they didn't turn the power back on because the winds were still crazy. And then it was, I think, around 3 in the afternoon that the fires were just raging. And then I think it was about like 5 o'clock when so many people like couldn't uh get ahead of the fire. And part of that was because they were being corralled in by the law enforcement who had orders to do that. So when that power was shut down, everybody knew that power was shut down. So for law enforcement, for officials to say, well, we have to block off these streets because there's power lines that are down and that's dangerous. But the imminent danger of the fire coming at you by far outweighs a de-energized power line being down, right? So I mean, that's crazy. Even if it hadn't been de-energized, still, you need to get away from the fire that's chasing you. But yeah, power lines that are down, that are live, are extremely dangerous and flammable, and we all know that. So they were kind of pretending like they were live power lines, and they knew, or they should have known, but they damn well knew that those power lines were deactivated. So that's some major effery. And what Eric West said that I thought was so freaking fascinating is that when the power was shut down at 4:30 AM in Lahaina on August 8th, it was continued to be off for weeks. So them using that as their excuse for corralling people into the burn zone is effing crazy. It's disgusting. And there was a communication blackout. So even though the cell phones were down, like nobody could make phone calls or receive phone calls, I don't think they could send texts, but they could receive texts. So that really cancels out the any argument of why there wasn't just group text sent out from the local government officials saying, "Get the heck out. There's fires that are ravaging through." And then they tried to say that the fires all happened, like all of the damage and all of the fatalities happened in like a 17 or 8 minute window of time. That's what Governor Green said at this UN meeting that a lot of people have been talking about. Um, and that's just disgusting. I mean, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. The fires were raging for many hours from, it's my understanding, like roughly 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock. But I think the bulk of it was like 3 to 5, but it was all dark because that freaking smoke that it seemed like it was much later. But, there were multiple fires off and on throughout the morning, um, and that's, things like, the boats burning, reports of there being fire on top of the water, um, there's just so many suspicious details. So again, that's all covered in Eric West's most recent video on Hawaii real estate that I'll put the link in. Um, so and the cell phone service was shut off for so long. Like I said, communication blackout. They had temporary flight restrictions, so nobody could fly their drones or their airplanes over to look into the burn zone. Complete media blackout, no access, complete media blackout, you guys. Um, and then the no water. And then this was one detail I hadn't caught before. This just breaks my heart and blows my mind. And again, is it just the perfect storm, or is this a orchestrated event? The firefighters said that the generator was out of diesel fuel. The generator was out of fuel, and that generator is what's used to operate the water wells, because sometimes they do have to shut the water down, but not very often. Mr. West said the only time that he's had the experience of living there with the water being shut off in like 10 years, 9 or 10 years, was during that tsunami thing. They shut off the water and they sent out a message to everybody saying we had to shut the water off. But they didn't send a message like that out this time. So, when school was canceled, there were people who left work to go home to take care of their kids and do things like bathe and do laundry and the kinds of things that you do when you're home. So they went home to do that. They went into the fire zone to do that, um, having no idea that their water wasn't working. So, there's also been a ton of reports that there was school, there wasn't school, that school started the next day. I believe that like the high school started the next day, but that the elementary school had started that day. Definitely there were kids that were at school that were sent home. And then, getting into the whole issue with the kids and the buses, and Brush Junkie does a really good job being more detailed talking about that in her most recent video that I'll have the link to. And there's still something like 430 families that represent the over 1,000 kids, or roughly 1,000 children, that are not re-enrolled in school yet. So that's a huge number. And, they're using privacy as their excuse for not um, being forthright about the information. And that's ridiculous. They can still keep some kind of privacy and still be forthright about some of the information. They can find a balance. I mean, the transparency is the law, and people need to know this information. It's completely out of control. Um, so let's jump over to Gabby Petito, since I did not get to that yesterday. Gabby Petito and Crystal Turner and Kylan Schulte. There are a couple of things that I didn't actually mention when I was covering that case in my video before last. So I think that was Friday. So I said that Kaylin Schulte had been at work at Moonflower from about 6 a.m. and she might have gotten off at 2 p.m. And that Gabby had been working on her laptop on her website for her van life channel for about 8 hours, but she started later in the day, so she wasn't there at 6 a.m. The place didn't even open until 8. But the information, if it's accurate, is that when the domestic violence incident happened and the police were called, I think was somewhere around 4:30 or so, and that Crystal and Kylan were hanging out around the cafe tables that Gabby was working at. So, they lived pretty far outside of town. So they didn't like travel back and forth in a day. They would come into town in the morning and they would go back to their campsite at the end of the day because it was, close to an hour away. Um, and so that I wanted to clarify that it was said that Gabby had been working there all day, but probably more from like what would that be, like 8 a.m. until 4? I mean, she was a hard worker. She definitely had a very strong work ethic. But also that the rumors were that um, Gabby and Brian were at the Woody's Tavern the following night while Crystal and Kylan were there. So if you've seen the video surveillance footage photographs of Crystal and Kylan at the bar, and I'll put one of those in my community posts too. Um, it's black and white and it's very clearly them, and they just look like they're having a good time talking with their friends, having a beer. And it's rumored that Petito and Laundry were there at the same time that they were there on Friday night. So, and on that Friday night, as you guys know, and I mentioned, um, the girls, Crystal and Kylan, were telling their friends about this really creepy guy at their campsite. And they said, if we disappear, it's him that killed us. And I'm just gonna stick to my guns that I don't think that Adam Pazinski had any kind of motive to hunt those 2 down. And then forgot to mention Dog the Bounty Hunter. Dog the Bounty Hunter came into town to help solve that case, and it was like the minute he got there, they were like, "Oh, we have it solved already. We forgot to tell everybody." You guys remember that? Like, seriously, that's freaking crazy. Like, I don't know what it was that they were so scared about Dog the Bounty Hunter, but that was how that went down. I know he had been in Florida trying to help find Brian Laundrie after that, and it was similar when he showed up in Florida. Like, seems like the officials in those cases were very afraid of Dog the Bounty Hunter. Actually, so Brian Laundrie was like the year before Kylan and Crystal, because their case just did not get attention, you guys. Their case went over a year without much coverage at all and without being resolved. And then all of a sudden, Dog the Bounty Hunter shows up, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, wait, yeah, we solved it. Yeah, we're good. You can go away, dog. Bye. Crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. So, um, what else? There's been all the hoopla the last couple of days, and you guys in my chat with yesterday with Crime Circus and Harsh's most recent videos. And I've watched them both a couple of times. And they didn't really neither one of those videos really changed my mind about anything. Not trying to be dismissive. I think that they're both amazing content creators. Um, and I especially, am impressed with Crime Circus. Like, he is just like on his game all the freaking time, in my opinion. And Harsh, he's just pumping out so many videos a day. Like, I said it yesterday. I hope he's not upset if he caught it. Um, I don't mean to sound derogatory. It's just that he's not a machine. None of us are. I don't think it's possible for us to pump out that many videos every single day and have really hot, top quality. And a lot of his videos are extremely top quality, but um, not batting a thousand. I mean, like I said yesterday, who is? So, so yeah, I appreciate you guys bringing up other content creators and other videos because I get some of the best information from you guys. So thank you for that. And I was kind of worried while I was continuing my video that, like, oh, maybe all this information will be irrelevant after I catch those. And for me, it wasn't like that at all. And like I said, I even watched them twice to see if I was missing something. And I thought they were both good videos, and especially Drip Drop. The whole thing with the cult stuff or the satanic stuff, it's my opinion that all of these disgusting cases have an element of that to some degree, whether it's like real um, formal or informal. Like, how can you do something like that and not be satanic and dark? I mean, that's just common sense. But again, I've not been following the Delphi case, but it's my understanding that that whole theory about um, the ritual stuff is what the defense attorney is throwing out. So just keep in mind, take everything with a grain of salt, that that's also what Scott Peterson's attorney tried to throw out there. Um, Garagos, they really tried to sell the satanic cult abduction crap with Lacey Peterson. And that's often, I want to say that in the Watts case, that was a thing too. And even the potential that the person that confessed to it and his alleged mistress, that they were into the what you sometimes people call it the dark arts. um it's really creepy stuff, but yes, how can you do anything like that to anybody without being dark like that? So I wouldn't think that that's the truth just because that's what is the current defense attorney theory and what people are running with. I mean, it seems like a lot of people are running with it, and maybe it is true and accurate with those two girls, Libby and Abby. But whatever it was, it's absolutely disgusting. And it could be that one accused, um, that the accused is into the dark arts. So maybe it's his own doing. I don't know. I'm not following that case, and I'm going to continue to not follow that case. But I just wanted to say that to, just be careful what you believe, because it's really easy to get tricked by the propaganda. And there's a lot of propaganda in all these cases. So Kylie Rodney, I was saying yesterday, like, why is there no Kylie Rodney special? Why is there no 48 hours or 60 minutes, 2020 Dateline? Why? I mean, that case, even if they just want to represent it the way it's been packaged by mainstream media, that case warrants a lot of scrutiny and a lot of attention, in my opinion, and especially when you look at who these key players are, um, the ones that live up the hill. Um, the Hamburglers, I don't, I think I've overused that word, but I just never want to say their names. I sometimes just say the H family, or the people that live up there. Like they live like right on Donner's Pass. Like they live like really close right to where that horrible, disgusting disaster happened. And that's just so weird to me. Like having been there to Truckee many times and staying right on Donner Lake and looking right up to Donner Pass where it happened, I would never want to go near there. Like I can't believe that they have like all this like memorial park stuff. It's pretty freaky. But some people, it seems like the people in Truckee celebrate it. I mean, I caught that immediately when we went to get food and went out to eat and to the grocery store. It was like everybody in this small town sees that you're a tourist and they talk about it like it's funny. They're just like, "Oh, isn't aren't you impressed with our cannibalistic history?" I mean, I'm serious, you guys. If you haven't been there, you need to go and check that shite out. It's crazy. It's just unbelievable. One sec. Um, let's see. Lost Trail Lodge weirdness, rich paid off, news, corporation executives. Hey, Michael McAllister. And yeah, if you don't mind welcoming people, Mark, since I'm doing a very poor job with the chat today, that would be very much appreciated. They're not going to be doing a 60 minutes because of the Richie people. Right. And the H family that lives up there, they have stakes in the companies that own all of these things. So that's 100% on Target. And yes, salty sage. Thank you for saying that C word. It's crazy. And, that whole disaster was not just a natural disaster from a snowstorm. That started with poor planning. It started with poor leadership. It's then continued with a bunch of bad choices that then resulted in that. And there was just so much creepiness about how the whole thing unfolded and how the history was then disclosed or not disclosed from the people that survived. I forget the numbers. It's been a while since I looked into it. I want to say, what was it? Like 80 people that were traveling and 40 that were eaten, something like that. And I don't know if you guys want to check. I have my phone right here. I want to check just because it's a number that I usually know off the top of my head. So Donner Party um, numbers. Let's just say what it answers with that. Um, Total in the group were 85. Survivors were 46. Oh, I'm so proud of myself. People involved in given parentheses. Okay. The party elected George Donner to serve as its leader, and at its peak, the Donner Party would number some 87 people, 27 men, 15 women, and 43 children. Um, and then of the 81 pioneers, oh, I was so close. I was only one off. 81 pioneers who began the Donner Party's horrific winter in the Sierra Nevada, only 45 managed to walk out alive. So that would be what, 36 that perished. And it says here, that's funny, of the 35 members who perished, which those numbers don't add up, 81, and then they're saying 45 and 35. So what happened to the other one? Anyway, of the 35 members of the Donner Party who perished in the Sierra Mountains, 25 were male and 15 were female. And see, it could be that they were at times selecting who would be next because people weren't passing away fast enough on their own. And so they were looking for the injured and the weak. And, especially back in those days, but still to this day, in situations of survival like that, it's always women and children first. So maybe they were volunteering their men as the next supper as opposed to the women. And because that's a lot. That's funny, interesting numbers. Okay, well, 29 men, 15 women, 43 children. So only 4 men survived, you guys. And only 5 women survived? Wait, what? The ones who perished, 25 were male. Okay, no, I'm mixing up my numbers. Sorry. I'm looking at the numbers from how many went out there. Okay, so of the 45 that lived, let's see, 35 that died, 25 were male and 10 were female. No, I'm not mixing up my numbers. I'm getting my mind blown. So 25 that died, and there were only 29 men to start with. So there was only 4 males that survived. That's freaking crazy. And then out of 15 women, 10 perished. So that's only 5 women that survived. And then all the kids survived. So I wonder if they picked out, um, yeah, all the kids survived allegedly. I wonder if there were some leaders who protected all the kids. Because how did 43 children manage to survive in that situation unless it was well organized by some of the elders? Holy crap, you guys. I thought I was like hallucinating. Oh my goodness. Wow. I'm going to fall into that rabbit hole now. Oh my goodness. Okay, so Kylie Rodney, it's the kind of town that celebrates something like the Donner Party tragedy. And it's kind of weird that her granddad was one of the people that thought it was a good idea to have a lodge up there. That is like severe choosing to live in a really dangerous zone like that. I mean, even down at Donner Lake, where all the houses are, it's still a dangerous zone because you're in the Sierra Nevada mountains and there's so much snow, and it's always a game of survival. But then to go up the peak is nuts. Like, generally speaking, people don't do that. So the H's do that, and Kylie's granddad did that. And I'm just going to guess that there's a lot of bravado in that, right? I mean, there seems to be a lot of bravado with the characters in the whole tragedy, like with SS and with Kylie's mother, even that as females, they've got that bravado going too. They really act like they're tough, and I just can't imagine how this young woman dealt with that whole culture. I mean, talk about like being a lamb in a field of wolves, basically. I mean, she was eaten alive, in my opinion. Um, Not to go along with that Donner Party, but just to go along with the metaphor of being a lamb in a field of wolves. Um, anyway, yeah. Let me look at my notes. Let me keep up with you guys. Are we already getting close to an hour? How does that happen? Goodness gracious. So yesterday I was talking a lot about In Cold Blood and that quadruple homicide and the parallels that I saw potentially with the Moscow massacre. And one of the things that I think they could potentially have in common is the being tied up, simply because of Roger Lanier, the captain, coming out and saying to the public, like, nobody was tied up. We don't want those rumors flying around. And it was like, what rumors? What are you even talking about? But when I was talking about the story with In Cold Blood, and that whole story is a documentary, basically, a true account of what happened when the unalivers broke into the farmer's house. And the mom was upstairs asleep and the daughter was in her room, I think, getting ready for bed, and the son and the father were awake. So the intruders tied up the men, the guys, in the basement, and they like tied them up, I think, they were on mattresses or cardboard or blankets or something. Like, there was stuff laid down on the floor of the basement so that it would be more comfortable for them. And when they tied them up, they were not intending to hurt them. They were actually like trying to make sure they didn't get hurt. And they just wanted to tie them up so that it would give them time to finish their looting and then get out of there. Um, but then after what happened upstairs with um, Perry trying to rescue the teenager from getting assaulted by his disgusting partner, um, that just cascaded into, well, since they shot her, then they had to kill the mother because now they can get busted for red rum. So then they had to go downstairs and do that to the father and the son in their warped imaginations. Um, and just thinking about how things transpired with the Idaho 4. And yes, I definitely think that that whole situation was orchestrated by multiple parties. And I think that there's just so much information that supports multiple parties being aware of it. I mean, you have to remember, it's hard to remember all these things, I think, as the year, wears on. We have to remember that Dylan posted the pictures of her and Kaylee at 3:30 in the morning, right? That's crazy. The pictures of her and Kaylee from the party on the 12th on Friday night, or um the night before that. Yeah, because it was the 13th. So, Dylan invited Kaylee to be her plus one at the sorority party. We all remember that that's what brought Kaylee back into town. So the whole reason I'm bringing this up is because I think Kaylee was the target. I thought that in the beginning. I thought that for a long time. And then I thought, well, maybe it's Maddie and maybe it's Ethan and Xana. It could be Maddie and Xana if there's something to do with the substances and the retribution and that whole thing. And like I said in my video yesterday, I think it's all the above. I think all of these things are contributing factors. But Kaylee being visiting that night, that weekend, and her moving, it was kind of the last opportunity. If she was the target, it was the last opportunity to get her. But especially because her car was in the parking lot driveway, and so there were multiple cars in the parking lot, the driveway of the house. And any intruder is going to recognize, like, that's a lot of cars. That means that that house has a lot of people in it. And it doesn't make sense that anyone's going to go into a house with that many people if they're not intending to do away with all of them. In my opinion, why would you go into a house with multiple people in it to unalive one or two or three or four when there's more than that? You're going to unalive everybody, just like in the In Cold Blood story. You that's how you do it. If you're an unaliver, you unalive any potential witness. That's just how it's done. I mean, it's common sense. So much of the effery and the gaslighting, it's so easy to get gaslit and to not realize, like, yeah, if you're the kind of crazy person that's going to do that, you're going to take care of all the witnesses and all the potential witnesses. That's what you do when you're a crazy person who does that. You don't, like, say, I'll let you live because you're pretty or whatever. And another complaint that I have about the whole freaking case is that story in the PCA about Dylan coming face to face with the unaliver, she said it was dark. She said she couldn't really see him, but she knew that the color of his clothes were black. Like, I mean, I'm wearing navy blue and I'm wearing a blue that's lighter than navy blue. And as you can see, this is black. But if I'm in the dark without all these lights on me, you're not going to know that these are blue. You're going to think they're black. If it's brown or a dark, dark purple, like a burgundy, for her to say wearing black, like, I would think like a witness would say dark clothing, not black, dark clothing. And the whole thing with the freaking bushy eyebrows is just ridiculous. And then the whole thing with the muscular, no, athletic, but not muscular, like, that's downright funny. Like, they're trying to say that the guy had an athletic build, but then they don't want to be too complimentary, so they cancel it out by saying, "Well, not muscular, just athletic." Like, but he's got clothes on, so how can you see how freaking muscular he is? Especially because it's dark. Remember, like, that whole thing is, to me, just a pile of BS. I don't believe any of that PCA, and I certainly don't believe the um, timeline starting with 4 a.m. because they use the DoorDash delivery that was delivered at about 4 or around 4. It was one of those two words that was used, not 4 a.m., but approximately 4 a.m. And That DoorDash delivery is the one thing that you can nail down the exact time. The thing with the phones pinging or the phone calls or the texts or the TikTok that Xana was on, all of that can be done by another party with some other party's phone. I mean, that is typical what unalivers do is they start trying to throw the timeline off by sending out texts or emails or whatever from the person's account. The timeline is the most important thing. Like you have to start with a good timeline. And if you are the criminal and you can throw the timeline off, you're halfway to being home free. I mean, that's where you start. That's like crimes 101, being a criminal 101 is like always freaking mess with your timeline. If they don't have a timeline, they don't have anything. Then they have to try to pull their timeline together. Like, again, these people telling themselves all the time, like, you don't pull a timeline together, you put a timeline together. If you're a detective, if you're I guess, creative, then you pull one together because you're inventing it, right? Because you know you're inventing it. Um, what else do I have here in my notes that I haven't shared yet? And we've talked about Kylie Rodney, we've talked about Moscow, we've talked about Petito, and we've talked about Maui and Kansas, with the Capote story, um, the In Cold Blood story. I want to get back to Maui for a second because that whole thing with what I was saying a few minutes ago about how they started with over 3,000 people missing, and then they said that the numbers settled and they continue to settle. Like, that's not how it goes. Like, they always start with a number that is not inflated, and then the numbers continue to rise. Like, think about Astroworld, right? In the end, you had 10 reported fatalities at Astroworld, but in the beginning, a few days after, it was a handful. And then there was another, and then another. And some of those were because they were not 100% gone. They were, on life support or something. And that was so sad. I don't know if you guys followed the Astro World tragedy, but that was, I think, one of the things that got me into true crime, actually, following that and looking at the last two fatalities, number 9 and 10. Number 9 was the one that the people were trying to rescue her. She was in her 20s and she was a graduate student at Texas A&M University. They were passing her over a barrier, kind of like crowd surfing her, and they dropped her on her head. And when you're watching that video of her, you're just like, "Dear Lord, I hope she's already deceased." But no, she was not already deceased. She was the ninth person to pass away on life support. So when they dropped her on her head, that was what did her freaking in. And then the 10th one, I think I'm remembering these right, that she was the ninth, and then the 10th one was that little kid, Ezra Blount or something like that was his last name, Ezra, and he was, like, 9 years old, and he was on his father's shoulders, and then his father survived, but he didn't. Like, whew. I mean, that's a really young age to have at a concert like that and to have anywhere near a mosh pit. But, you never wanna blame the victim, of course. And, full disclosure here, I went to my first concert when I was 9 years old. It was The Who. Little Feat opened up at the Anaheim Stadium in Los Angeles. And, my parents took me and my sister and our friends because he wanted to see the concert and I don't know, didn't know a babysitter or something. Anyway, so he took a 9-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a couple of our friends. And it was like 100,000 people too. I mean, that was nuts. And it wasn't even fun. It was crowded and huge. And I loved The Who. I loved The Who. They were my favorite band when I was 7. But being in a crowd of 1,000 people, not fun. Not fun at all. Did I say 1,000? 100,000. And I wanna say that Astroworld concert, wasn't that at least 50,000? And that was, like, the first big concert after COVID, so that was completely insane, but my whole point in bringing that up is how numbers don't come out of a tragedy inflated and then die down. The numbers come out with what they must tell you, like a need to know basis, and then the numbers usually creep up. It's not usually accurate right out from the gate because there's always more information coming in. But for those people with the Maui case to try to sell the numbers going down, it's freaking crazy. And especially at the rate that they went down, like from 3,000 to 1,000 to 300 to they're probably at about 50 right now. I mean, seriously, I'm not joking. It's out of control crazy. And then remembering too that the whole census of Lahaina was very broad in the range from 9,000 to 13,000 people. So 9,000 and 13,000, that's a 4,000 discrepancy. So, sorry, my phone's ringing. Turn that off. It's didn't do it. Who's calling me anyway? You should know better. Don't call me on my live. Um, so what else? Yeah, it's still also, I think, one of the most major issues that I derived from watching that 48-hour special a second time was Steve Gonzo saying in response to, "Do you think they have the right guy?" Him saying that he trusts no one, he doesn't trust any of the information, and that he has to see everything for himself. Um, I really think that that's him saying he doesn't trust the police, he doesn't trust the university, and it's my opinion that the university is what's driving the case, and they are who are calling the shots. So funny too that university president, his name is Scott Green, and I always forget the Governor Green's first name in the governor of Hawaii. But anyway, just weird that you've got two with that same name, Green. Um and I think that's everything. So let's get caught up with you guys a little bit and then say goodbye for today. Um, yeah, I think that's everything. If not, I'll catch you guys in tomorrow and say, wait, I forgot something. Um, very good metaphor. It fits scary spot. Let's see. Which metaphor? I did not know Donner was there and not in the Alps of Canada. Wow. They were not close to getting help in time. Crazy. Yeah, so it was like the worst snowstorm of 50 years, and they were stuck out there for like 3 or 4 months. Um, I think the snowstorm hit like the end of January. Um, they had set out from Colorado maybe in November. They did not take enough food with them to begin with. It was poor planning from the get-go. It was really poor leadership from the get-go. They ran into trouble and they didn't account for that. They didn't revise their plan. And then they got hit with this massive snowstorm and it was just a freaking disaster. And then by the time they were rescued, let's see, like February, March, April, could it have been that long? Um, if they were rescued in April, again, I could Google it, but I won't bother. I've been looking at my phone too much and it confuses me. Trying to think here. This is my extended brain, right? I like to just rely on me brain. Um, so yeah, with the dates, the time frame of it, by the time they were rescued and started telling the story that they told didn't add up with the evidence that was at the crime scene. I mean, it's not a crime scene to cannibalize in the event that somebody's already deceased and you don't have food. I mean, that's kind of a natural, disgusting thing that any of us hope that we never have to deal with, right? But the numbers of people that passed away and, you know, it's it doesn't sound like anybody, like, tried to go get help, like, they just stayed put, and that it was people that knew that they were traveling and knew that they weren't arriving, that eventually other parties figured it out and went out to find them, is how they were finally rescued. But when the people rescuing the Donner Party got there, like, the most, um significant issue I think that is talked about is the crazy that they saw in people's eyes and faces. So, like, it was horrific, but um the absolute insanity of what these people were doing, and then how they tried to pretend that it wasn't what it looked like. Right? It's not what it looked like. I mean, funny, not funny. Very, very sad, and just a really disgusting history to build your community on. That's my point. Um, Everywhere in the world looks at that as a super disgusting tragedy, but people in Truckee look at it like it's something funny. And this whole case with Kylie Rodney is not being looked at the way you would think a missing child would be looked at, even if it was a car accident. I mean, nothing about the case is what it should be or what it seems. And, to have people like SF Investigates or like uh, Zanime or American Dream Catcher, to have these people inserting themselves into the case, like, why would you be doing that when it's a girl that got in a car crash? Like, you wouldn't be. So the answer's in the question. Them being there outs the whole situation, in my humble opinion. So on that, I'm going to say peace out, you guys. Have a fabulous rest of your day. Thank you so much for being here. Um, I hope that you can stay hydrated and well nourished, get your exercise, be productive, feel good, be kind, forgive people, forgive yourself. I do want to brag for a quick second. I am drinking vegetable juice, and you can't really tell because my glass is blue, or is it black? It's black, but it's green vegetable juice from Trader Joe's. So it's like a power drink, and it doesn't taste good. Like, a lot of times I like those kinds of drinks. I don't like the Trader Joe's one, but it is good for you, so I drink it anyway. So I just was letting you guys know that I'm proud of myself for eating all my vegetables, and I only eat all my vegetables because I'm constantly being Miss Bossy Pants telling you guys to. So then I'm like, you got to practice what you preach. So thanks for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday. See you tomorrow, and check out that Brush Junkie. Check out that Hawaii 50. I mean, Hawaii real estate, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks again. Sending you light, sending you love. Take care. Have a great day.